Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Peter and you're watching Thailand Bound. Thanks for joining me today. Right, it's a Saturday, it's story time, and I've got 4 fantastic stories lined up for you today, guys. The first story is quite a long story. The following 3, the second, third and fourth, they're quite short stories. The first story that I read out today is a dominant one. So before I get into these stories, something I just wanted to explain quite quickly. I had a comment in the week after last week's set of stories, and somebody said about one of the stories, they kind of said, well, is that it? Nothing dramatic happened? So it didn't. No, what you got to remember is these stories are sent in to me by everyday people who go to Thailand, visit Pattaya, Bangkok, wherever, and they're just about their experiences. So some of them are a bit more dramatic than others, and some of them are just interesting stories. Like the story I'm going to read you, the first one. It's an interesting story, and what's good about this first story, this is a follow-up of the one that I read to you last week. Do you remember the guy who, he started off in Vancouver, he went to Singapore, ended up in Bangkok, and we ended that story by saying, his story by saying, we then went down to Pattaya for 9 days, but that's another story I'll tell to you another time. Well, that's the story we're going to read out first. This is a continuation of that story. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into this, and I hope you enjoy this one, guys.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Okay, so here we go. We decided to go back to the Nana Plaza Hotel and get some sleep in preparation for our journey to Pattaya. Morning came, and after a very good breakfast at the hotel, we were on our way to Pattaya in a taxi. The supports for the BTS SkyTrain were being installed at the time and had already made it to the south end of Bangkok. I watched the row of supports for miles and miles and enjoyed the perfect weather in contrast to Singapore, where it rained every afternoon. We arrived in Pattaya after lunch and checked into the Palm Garden Hotel at the Dolphin Roundabout. My room had a view of the swimming pools and they looked inviting. After checking into our rooms, we started walking south down Beach Road. We continued to check out the small bars and stopped at a small bar called Vic's Beer Bar on the Beach Road. We grabbed a few beers and sat there for 2 hours or so watching people and enjoying the ocean view. About 6 p.m. we grabbed a BART bus and went to the River Thai restaurant. It was a beautiful outside restaurant, and again we watched Thai dancers and musicians in their unique costumes. Around 8 p.m. we took a BART bus to Walking Street and started walking north along Beach Road. By 9 p.m. we had found a collection of roughly 50 beer bars all under one roof, and I think it was between Soi 6 and 7. We sat at a bar that did not have a lot of customers. A nice young girl sat in front of me and we chatted for maybe 2 hours. I bought her a couple of ladies' drinks and she told me her life story, including recently having a baby with a Thai boyfriend. She said because of the baby she had to continue to work at the bar. We played a few of the bar games and became friends. Around midnight I decided to call it a night as I was real tired, went back to my room and slept. The next morning I was up early and my friend Mark knocked on my door. We left my room and went to Walter's room. The door was open but no sign of Walter, and the room looked like it had been ransacked. We went to the front office and they told us Walter did not like something in his room and he had been transferred to a different room. We had the front desk ring his phone and he came down for breakfast. But it gave us a scare for a minute or two. We hung out by the pool for the rest of the morning, and after lunch we grabbed a BART bus to about halfway along Beach Road and stopped at Vic's Beer Bar again. Being on Beach Road allowed us to people watch and enjoy the ocean scenery. Later we walked to Walking Street and ended up getting some hamburgers at a beer bar right at the Walking Street sign. It was now getting dark and we explored the marine bar and many others. Around 10 o'clock we eventually made our way back to the beer bars that we visited the night before, and again I found the same bar and talked to the same bar girl again and bought her a couple of ladies' drinks. She asked if I had found a girlfriend and I had said no and that I really wasn't looking for one. Mark and Walter had left the beer bar I was in and I did not find them after that. I returned to my room alone with a little glow on and had another good sleep. I woke up the next morning to the phone ringing, showered and met up with Walter for breakfast. Mark showed up, we had another morning swim in the pools, then it was off to Tiffany's famous Ladyboy show. Mark said we had to see it to believe it. We walked south, Second Road, and found Tiffany's and purchased our tickets for later that afternoon. We then continued our walk until we reached a freestanding building called Sabai D, a soapy massage parlour. To the left of us was a glass enclosed room with maybe 16 girls in evening dresses and all made up to look gorgeous. Each girl had a number. If you wanted their company at the table, you only had to ask the waiter and let him know which number you would like, and he would bring the girl to your table. Mark requested 3 of the girls come back to our table. All 3 girls spoke perfect English and told us funny stories that included Mark. The manager brought some food plates to the table and we stayed for a couple of hours. I asked a girl called Nit if she would be interested in showing me the rest of Pattaya and I would pay for her time. She said, "What, no short time?" I said, "Yes, no short time." She broke out laughing and said that she didn't know about that. It is something she had never done. The whole table was laughing at that remark. We returned here a couple of times. As I say, the seating was good and the air condition was really cold. I never went upstairs, but I did enjoy the company and talking to these amazing looking women. We left and went back to Tiffany's for the show. Without our knowledge, we were given VIP tickets to a sold out show. Multiple buses of Japanese tourists arrived and roughly 300 tourists filled the venue. Our seats were within a square boxed section perfectly in the middle of the theatre. We soon realised we were the only people that were not Japanese or Thai. The show started and consisted of 10 or so shows with singing and dancing. Several times during the show, one of the actors would come where we were sitting and try to sit on our laps or get us to dance, which made the rest of the crowd laugh. We were not happy about that and did not enjoy being singled out, but it was short-lived. The show was quite beautiful and sometimes funny or sad. After the show, 5 or 6 of the main actors, still in costume, went outside for a photo shoot opportunities. For money, of course, and it wasn't cheap. I observed the tourists lining up for opportunity, including families with kids. On one occasion, a family was being photographed with the father's arm around the ladyboy, and he tried to cop a feel, and the ladyboy grabbed his hand to prevent him from going further. You are not allowed to photograph them outside with your own camera, since they are making money from the photos. Regardless, I returned several days later and made a video of the tourists getting their pictures taken by hiding between the buses and using my zoom lens. Friends back home would never have believed it otherwise. We returned to Vic's bar for some drinks. Mark and Walter decided to bar find 3 of the girls. I was shocked when the girls came over to the table and started acting like girlfriends, but it was also very nice. I did not pick the girls, but was okay with that. My new girlfriend was called Kung. We stayed at the bar until 10 or so, and then I took a BART bus back to the hotel. My girl was very short and a little round, but had a pretty face, and she was quite soft-spoken. She spoke English enough to get by, but I thought it was my responsibility to try and speak better Thai. If my pronunciation is not correct, the locals will help me improve. Kung stayed with me that night and never asked for any money. I did not know if she had been paid for her time by my buddies, but she never mentioned it. She left after breakfast and I told her I would likely see her again in her bar. The next adventure this day included a speedboat ride to Koh Lan, which my friends wanted me to negotiate for some reason. I found a guy willing to take us, but in retrospect, it was expensive. He dropped us off at a private beach. It looked perfect, but was separated from the main beach by a lot of sharp rocks. The boat then left and we were a little mad since we thought the boat would stay. Immediately, a little old man came walking towards us, demanding money for us to stay on the beach. We told him to leave us alone, which he did not appreciate. I went for a snorkel, but after 10 minutes or so, I could see him returning with a machete. So we got up and made our way over the rocks to the main beach. I ended up cutting my ankle and it bled for a long time. Let me just cut in here, guys. I have heard about this scam before, and it is a scam. It's basically where you pay, it's not happened to me, but I've heard about it from a few people, but you basically pay one of these speedboat tourist kind of day out trips to go to a really pretty island, and you pay for the trip, which should include the whole day, and you think that's it. You might have to pay for a little bit of food at an island cafe or something like that. But they then take you to the island, drop you off on the beach, and before you know it, you've got somebody there demanding money, saying you can't get onto the island or the beach unless you pay money. And it's quite a common scam, apparently. So I have heard about this. Okay, on with this story. The island has a beautiful beach, but every time I went into the water, my cut started to bleed, which basically ruined my snorkeling experience. At the end of the day, the boat returned for us, but we could see it returning to the wrong beach. After a few minutes, he found us and we had an uneventful ride back to Pattaya. That night we ate at the hotel and wandered back to the array of beer bars before returning to Vic's beer bar. Kung wanted me to bar fine her again, so I did, and my friends also did the same. We stayed another hour, then returned to the hotel. We stayed up for a while and Kung turned on the TV. Some sort of soap opera was in progress and a very ordinary woman was cursing everybody out. She was telling me who the characters were, but I did not really care. The next morning we ate at the hotel and I asked Kung if she would take me to a mall. We took a BART bus to the mall and walked around for a while. Kung left after lunch and I went back to the hotel and sat by the pool. My waiter kept saying tilak, a Thai word meaning darling or honey. In the mid-afternoon, we went back to Vic's beer bar. We started talking to some German tourists. They joined us at our table and we had some good conversations. I noticed a street food cart had pulled beside the bar and watched our girls run to the cart and purchase several bowls of sticky rice and creamier cups of some kind of sauces. To our surprise, the girls dropped off a bowl of rice and some sauces in front of us, and without saying anything, they returned back to the bar counter to eat their portions. We were waiting for forks or chopsticks or something to eat the rice with, but nothing was coming. Finally, Walter's girlfriend came over to me and said, "What? You know like?" I replied, "I don't know. We haven't had forks, so I can't try it." She rolled her eyes like I was the most stupid guy on the planet, then grabbed a small amount of rice with her fingers and made a little ball of it and dipped it in the soup. After 15 minutes later, another cart appeared and once again the girls brought us food. This time it was chicken satay on wooden skewers with Thai peanut sauce and sweet cucumber sauce. This was fantastic, but they only brought one per person. I wished the cart had remained for a while. It was so good. Sure enough, another 30 minutes went by and another cart pulled up and I waited in anticipation for the girls to bring us a sample. Kung brought a large bowl to the table. Unfortunately, the bowl contained deep fried grasshoppers complete with legs and wings. Our German friends were moderately disgusted and we were not too happy as well. Walter's girlfriend tried to get me to eat some, encouraged me by saying, "Just eat the head, it's like a nut." I did not want any and they finally took the bowl away. I found out later that the grasshoppers are killed by a chemical and are scooped up to make collecting easy. They potentially contain a lot of chemicals. Later that night we again paid for the bar fines and returned to the hotel. Kung said she was happy to be in the air-conditioned room where she could also watch TV and relax. In the morning, we all had breakfast together and made some plans to take the girls to Koh Samat, just south of Rayong for the next day. The girls are up for it and told us that today they would take us to see the big Buddha at the south end of Pattaya. After breakfast, we climbed onto a BART bus and the girls paid for us, so we did not have to pay the tourist price. We were taken to the big Buddha and it was amazing. It is a 5-story Buddha covered in gold paint and it was beautiful. The girls talked to the monk and received a small piece of very thin gold to place on the Buddha. Next morning we all ate breakfast and got packed for a long bus ride to Rayong. This was a good chance to get out of the city and see some of the countryside. I could see large temples on the hilltops and forests that were very lush. The bus dropped us off at Rayong depot and we took a BART bus to the departure pier for Koh Samet. 40 minutes later we were at the island and a pickup truck drove us down a short road to the beach. We had some lunch in a beach restaurant and that was very good and I went for a snorkel. Walter and Mark had been swimming, but when I returned I did not see the girls. They were sleeping in the shade and I had no interest in going into the water. I had a good snorkel outing but had to get out due to the cut on my ankle opening up again. We departed the island in the afternoon and the girls slept the entire way back. The air conditioning was cold for Kung, so I covered her up with a beach towel. I couldn't help thinking that bringing the girls was a bad idea. They were not much company and we hardly saw them. We returned to Pattaya and the girls wanted to go home and change clothes. We said we would see them later. The next morning I had breakfast and went to the pool for a few hours. My waiter from the hotel brought me orange juice and later some beers, and we chatted a bit. My goal today was to find a pharmacy and get antibiotics for some tropical lotion, since the infection from the cut was spreading faster. Mark saw the cut when he found me at the pool and was shocked. He said, "We're going to get some medicine right now." So I dressed and we took a BART bus down Beach Road and got out near a mall. Minutes later, I had some tropical cream and I returned to the hotel to put it on and cover over with a bandage. I spent more time relaxing by the pool and played a little pool with a tourist on an outdoor table. I had a good lunch at the hotel, and in the afternoon Mark and Walter found me. Mark was heading to the Sabai D massage and Walter wanted to go back to Vic's. I decided to go with Walter to the beer bar and Kung was there. She was much more polite than the previous time I saw her. Walter and his girlfriend wanted to go bowling and talked me into going along. I paid the bar fine for Kung and we left as it was getting dark. The bowling alley was not too far away and we took a BART bus. Bowling was okay, but Walter and I lost to the girls and they were giving us a hard time about it, although it was in fun. Kung was still grunting at me to get my attention, but at least she was smiling. We returned to our hotel around 11 o'clock and went to sleep shortly after. We had a nice night, but nothing too memorable. She still had not asked for any money, and I had not given her anything, except the clothes we had previously purchased. The next day, the girls left after breakfast, and I went for a very long walk throughout the various sois. I got back to the hotel around 4:30 and sat by the pool for an hour. We decided to go to a go-go bar that Mark liked, and he said they have a show we have to see. We finished dinner around 8 o'clock and then cruised up and down the sois near Walker Street looking for a go-go called Classroom. We finally found the place. There were no seats as it was packed, so we were talking about coming back later that evening or maybe on another night. One of the staff approached us and says he could find us 3 seats as some people had just left. We followed him in and sure enough there were 3 seats available inches from the stage. Best seats in the house by the looks of it. I sat adjacent to a small section of stairs allowing the girls to get onto the stage and noticed my seat was very warm. Walter and Mark had been placed 90 degrees from me, but only a few feet, and we could see each other and still talk. On a stage were about 6 girls looking totally bored and dancing in swimsuits. After a few minutes, beers arrived, the girls left the stage and the lights dimmed and black lights were turned on, UV lights, that made certain parts glow in the dark. A voice over the speakers announced, "It's showtime." A semi-nude ladyboy jumped up on stage, lit a candle and let the hot wax drip all over him. The Japanese tourists were very happy about this and threw quite a lot of money on stage. We watched the whole act, but it was not something I needed to see or wanted to again. Next up was the boring dancing girls and some music. I ordered another beer and saw some girls getting ready for another act. One of the girls had receded hairline with a beautiful face. She looked very exotic and had fairly dark skin. The music then stopped. The boring dance girls left the stage and 5 new girls came on, all passing me up the stairs to the stage. The girl I had been noticing used my shoulder and put her hand on me for a balance as she climbed the stairs in very high heels. The high heels were the only thing she was wearing. Reaching the top of the stage, she turned around and gave me a nice smile. As before, the lights dimmed and the black lights came on. The girls danced slowly to the music for about 2 minutes and they moved about the stage, except the girl in front of me who stayed in place. She was maybe 2 feet from me and my buddies were giving me the thumbs up sign. She proceeded to dance in front of me. Upon completion of their act, she came down the stairs, again holding onto my shoulder, but this time stopped and gave me a kiss on the cheek. My buddies were saying that was pretty good, eh? And I was in shock, thinking that it was fantastic. Then my buddy said, "Okay, time to go." I said, "No, what?" But I ended up following them out of the bar. I probably whined all the way back to the hotel. If there was one girl that I wanted to bar fine, it was her. I woke up early in the morning and had breakfast at the hotel and went for another long walk for more photographs. I went back to the hotel and my buddies said they wanted to go back to Vic's bar and people watch. I went with them, and while there, the German guys came in and sat with us again. A young boy was trying to sell leather wallets and came to our table. The wallets were not expensive and Mark took one from the boy. He then told the boy he did not want to pay for it, but did not give it back. The boys stood around for a few minutes, then went to other tables to try and sell. The German guys were appalled that Mark would do this and told him so, and went on to tell him of the little money these kids make, etc. Mark just smiled and told them, look, it'll be okay. Mark kept an eye on the little boy, thinking he would return for his money, but he didn't. The boy was heading out of the bar area. Mark chased after the boy and told him he was kidding and probably gave the kid double what he was asking. Our girls were there, but I received a somewhat chilly grunt from Kung, so I did not go out of my way to chat her up. We were 2 days from leaving, so I was not bothered, and I left after a couple of beers. I then moved to another bar and talked to the girl in that bar who I had met on the first night in Pattaya. She was super nice and we talked for a while. I slipped 500 baht into her hand without anyone seeing and told her that I hoped she had a good life. I left the bar and slowly made my way back to the hotel. I was near the very north end of Beach Road when I saw a tall lady riding a scooter in an evening dress. She stopped and asked me if I would like to get on and go for a ride. I thought for a second about the horror stories that might accompany that decision and nicely said no thanks. I arrived back at the hotel knowing the next day would be our last. I went out in the early afternoon and walked to some streets I had not seen previously. I enjoyed the last few hours of solitude and ended up at the beach for a while. Around 4, I went back to the first bar and said my final goodbyes. I then stopped at 2 beer bars I had not visited previously and the girls were a little aggressive. I did not feel like playing bar games, so returned to the hotel after 1 beer in each place. An hour later, Walter called and wanted me to meet him downstairs. Walter came in shortly after. We took a bus to Walking Street and we had dinner and watched kickboxing for a couple of rounds. We decided to go back to Vic's bar and we walked there after dinner. I decided I did not need to go back to Vic's bar and see the girls, so I passed on that and went back to the hotel. At 10:45 there was a loud knock on my door and Walter was there with his girlfriend and Kung. Walter said, "You're welcome." He paid the bar fine, I guess, and Kung came into my room. She was happy to see me and wondered why I was not in the bar today. I told her I was preparing to leave in the morning and would need my rest. I told her she was welcome to stay. She was very happy about that and she made herself comfortable. Kung and I fooled around for a bit and then I had a good sleep, or at least I had a good sleep. After breakfast the next morning, the girls waited with us for a taxi. I looked at the amount of baht I had left and I gave about $100 to Kung in Thai baht. She had never asked me for money and I was appreciative of that. I would have paid her, of course, if she had asked. She gave me a present of a glass rooster ornament paperweight and a nice Thailand card. Kung's last words to me were, "Come back and see me, Tilak." She was a nice girl, but we were very different people and the language barrier made it difficult. Still, her heart was in the right place and she never tried to take advantage of me. I gave her a long hug before climbing into the taxi. We were all out of cash when we found out we had to pay to leave the airport and it wasn't cheap. My credit card worked, so I paid for all of us. We flew back to Singapore, had an overnight stay, then a 16-hour flight home the next morning. So fantastic, memories packed into such a short time, it was hard to take it all in. My photos turned out excellent. Thinking of my girl Kung back then, she was nothing special in Pattaya among thousands of others, but right now, looking at her picture, she was very, very special and I would be a very lucky guy if I was with her right now. So there you go, guys. That's got to break the record for the longest story that I've ever told on this channel. And as I say, nothing overly exciting, but it was quite an interesting story. Before we get into the next story, I just want to remind you guys that I'm back here this evening on this channel at 9 p.m. UK time for a live stream. Last week's live stream went on for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. I generally planned to do them for about 2 hours, but it was great fun. I had a few Cronenbergs and we had nearly 200 people in the chat and we just talked about anything anybody wanted to talk about. So if you're around this evening, why not join us? As I say, I'll be here about 9 p.m. It's a live chat. We'll have a few beers and we'll see how we get on. Okay, right. We're going to jump straight into story number 2. And as I say, these are quite short stories. So let's just crack on with the second one. This one happened during a trip back in 2018 on my 3rd trip to Thailand. During the trip, I had made friends with a circle of German guys. Germans seem to have the same taste for Thailand as us Brits, and many go there up to 3 times a year to enjoy all of what it has to offer. One evening around 8 o'clock, I started my usual crawl around Pattaya, stopping at Soi 8 and stopped into one of the outside bars. One of the top girls there, a taller, bleach blonde and slim, I called over and after a few drinks decided that I would really like her to join me outside of the bar. We headed back to the hotel and proceeded to have a crazy, exhilarating round of bathroom aerobics, where I was even a bit pooped by the end of it. After a shower and everything, she started to seem a bit bored at my place, and around this time I received a message over line from one of the group of Germans I had mentioned before, who were meeting up at a Thai karaoke place just outside of Pattaya and sent me the coordinates. I decided to take the girl along, as the more the merrier. Got a motorbike taxi, showed him where, and after 20 minutes of the three of us on the one motorcycle arrived. Fun place and a welcome change from the usual beer bars of Pattaya. About an hour in of good conversation, beer and great Thai food, what's her face said she had to leave. When he says what's his face, he's talking about the girl, of course. She had to leave and said she would be back. In the next few more hours of fun, she never came back. I then remembered that she was carrying my hotel room key. When I got back, I informed them that I didn't have the key and they charged me 1,000 baht for losing it, which was the cost of a short time anyway. Either this was a standard cost for losing the key, or the girl had brought the key back and asked the hotel to charge me. Although nothing was taken from my room, either way, another fun night in Pattaya I can remember. And that's it basically. That was a very, very short story. But I will say on that story, you were very, very lucky, because only once in all my trips did I lose a hotel key card. And I was actually charged 3,000 baht and there was no getting out of it. So let's get straight into the third story now. Hi Peter, I'm from Worthing in the UK. Here is a short story for you. I was on holiday in Pattaya in June 2005. The bar was nothing special, but it did have a lovely cashier working in the bar who I was pursuing with no luck. One day I was in the bar trying to chat up the cashier when I was approached by a scrawny looking guy with a bandage on his knee. His name was Terry and he was from Bolton in the UK. He sat on the bar stool next to me and told me he'd been bitten badly by a street dog, which explains his bandages. Terry chatted, played pool, and we had a good laugh. He would tell all the guys who came into the bar about the bandage and how he was worried he might have rabies. Most of the guys who were speaking to him just inquired about his health. The cashier was finishing her shift, so I had one chance left at her, but with no luck. Forward 24 hours to my last day and I'm back in the same bar with Terry, the cashier and a hangover. I have one last go at cracking the cashier, but she is not cracking. Me and Terry have a good afternoon drinking and playing pool and the hangover's gone. When Terry tells me that later that night he will be boxing at the beer bar complex before Walking Street next to the Pattaya beer garden, I burst out laughing and asked him if he was joking, but he was serious. The reason I laughed, he was 5'8" tall and 7 stone, wet through with bandage on his knee. Basically, he couldn't punch his way out of a paper bag, but he was adamant that at 9 p.m. he would be boxing. At 5 p.m, Terry and I started heading towards Walking Street, stopping at a bar and popping into the Tahitian Queen Go-Go bar on the beach road at about 7 p.m. We are walking past the beer bar complex with the boxing ring and Terry starts to do some shadow boxing while telling all and sundry that he will be boxing at 9 p.m. Nobody, including me, is taking him seriously and most think he is just another Pattaya crank. Me and Terry head into Walking Street for 2 or 3 more beers in a go-go bar. Around 8:30 p.m, Terry says it's time to go and we head for the beer bar complex with the boxing ring. On arrival, Terry chats with someone in charge and much to my disbelief, the guy in charge seems to know Terry and I am shocked when Terry returns and tells me he's next on at 9 p.m. I have one last go at talking him out of it, but he is adamant he is here to box. When I see his opponent, I fear the worst, as his opponent is 6'2" and 14 stone of muscle. It's a total mismatch and I fear Terry could get hurt badly. So I tried to have a chat with his opponent, but he's not in the mood to listen and looked like he wanted to give me a whack. The bell rings for the start of the fight and words cannot explain what happened next. The whole beer bar complex bursts into hysterical laughter at Terry's antics in the ring, which left his opponent baffled. I don't think a single punch was thrown and I was thankful Terry didn't get seriously hurt. The only way of describing what happened in the ring is to watch the scene from Rising Damp with Rigsby boxes or Porridge when Norman Stanley Fletcher boxes. Both scenes are on YouTube. You meet some real characters in Pattaya, and Terry was a great laugh. I've never seen Terry since then, and I wonder how he is. But most of all, I wonder about the beautiful cashier I never cracked. I hope you can make some sense of this, Peter. You can read out real names if you like. All the best, Paul. Okay, so on with, this is our last story today, guys, and I hope you're enjoying these so far. It's 2007, and I just got happily divorced after 23 years of a bad marriage. It was one of those marriages where we had absolutely nothing in common. All I ever did was work to stay out of the house. With the kids all grown up and the house sold, I was free at last, so I headed off to Thailand to see if it was as good as I had heard. The first hotel I stayed in was a Monty Inn near Pat Pong. The airport touts had sold it to me. I remember I was both excited and nervous as I travelled by taxi through the streets of Bangkok, looking at all the different sights, smells, tuk-tuks and beautiful girls. It was mid-afternoon and very clear, so I was able to take it all in. I wasn't a big drinker, but couldn't resist a couple of San Miguels from the minibar before I left the hotel. The beers helped calm me down. Within 5 minutes of stepping out of the hotel, I was touted nervously to a sauna spa type massage place where I enjoyed all of its facilities. After this initiation period, I relaxed and got properly into the way of things. Flew back and forward over the next couple of years, maturing a bit every time. It was mid-afternoon and very clear, so I was able to take it all in. I wasn't a big drinker, but couldn't resist a couple of San Miguels from the minibar before I left the hotel. The beers helped me calm down my nerves. Within 5 minutes of stepping out of the hotel, I was touted nervously to a sauna spa type massage place where I enjoyed all of its facilities. After the initiation period, I relaxed and got properly into the way of things. Flew back and forward over the next couple of years, maturing a bit each and every time. It was all beers and bars, fines, etc. initially, but the novelty was wearing thin. The following situation put a stop to the partying, although temporary. Staying at Centrepoint, I didn't drink in the daytime, but still partied later on. I came across a real stunner from a local hairdresser who stayed with me in my hotel. I'd been to her room but couldn't stay there. It was just a typical tiny room and shower. No money exchanged hands. I just bought her meals, drinks and little gifts. This was over a 2-week period. She was a good girl, I think, at least for the 2-week period that I was with her. She would stay in the room and I would leave her a spare key card at reception while I popped out for a few beers in the evening. On one of these pop-outs, I met another super stunner. I got greedy. In my semi-drunken logic, I worked out that I could get another room at the same hotel and, well, just decide which go later. Isn't it amazing how an intoxicated brain just doesn't think ahead? Anyway, there I was. I woke up with this new girl and then had to go upstairs to the other one as I attempted to explain my absence last night. Surprise, surprise, she was okay about it. She was an easygoing type. The new girl was on the 4th floor and the first one was on the 9th floor. Neither knew of each other's existence. Well, it became like a scene from Brian Rick's Benny Hill episode. This lasted about 6 days. By the end, I was running out of excuses for both girls and feeling really guilty. I was tearing my hair out and they both seemed determined to stay. I should have said earlier, I was a decent looking guy. I didn't look my age and I spent quality time with the girls when I was with them. I finally escaped, grabbing all my bags and jumping into a taxi. I then flew to Chang-Mia. I had felt like a lobster in a pot. What was I to do? I should say at this point that I absolutely love Bangkok and the whole package that goes with it, but never again, never with the 2 girls again. I don't really understand why he did that. It's a bit strange, isn't it, if you're in a hotel and anyway, quite strange, as I say. Okay, guys, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed those 4 stories. As I say, today I'll be back at 9 p.m. for the live stream. Hope you can join us, but until then, thanks once again, guys, and I'll catch up with you all later.